everybody, what's up and welcome to episode 74 of Into the Necrosphere. My guest on this installment of the podcast is Jesse Matthewson of Ken Mode, a man who I have had on my list of people to talk to for quite some time now, so it was great to finally be able to hook that up. And trust me when I say this conversation does not disappoint. That's going to be coming your way shortly. I am also talking later on in the show about the biggest death metal release of 2021, the new Cannibal Corpse, as well as a band out of India called Moral Collapse, which I have a suspicion is going to feature on a great many best of lists at the end of 2021. So stick around for that. I will also be picking through the latest metal headlines and telling you what I think so that you don't have to bother reading that trash yourself. But yeah, all sorts of great stuff coming your way. Remember, if you are new to the show and you are not yet a subscriber, then get on that shit. I post new episodes every Tuesday to Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. I've also started posting just shortened clips of the review section. So if you don't get round to checking out the reviews, you can see 1-2 minute clips of the reviews that I do. I post those separately on YouTube. But either way, if you like what you see or if you like what you hear, then leave me a like, comment, share, subscribe, leave a review, all of that good stuff. Follow the show on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're in a band and you've just recorded your demo masterpiece and you want me to hear it, then send me an email to intothenecrosphere@gmail.com or hit me up on the socials. And if I like what I hear, I will feature your band on the show. And who knows, you might even get to be on Mean Street Studios and be a guest on Into the Necrosphere. Speaking of upcoming guests, next week I am rejoined by Kelly T of Kelly T Black Metal Reviews. Really, really cool catching up with her. And then I have got in the pipeline, and I'm not going to say who it is because, as all of you know, I'm paranoid as fuck. And even though this is already in the diary and it's already confirmed, I won't announce anything until I know for sure that it's there and it's recorded. But I have got in the pipeline the biggest guest from a sales and profile perspective that the show has ever seen. Frankly speaking, I'm gobsmacked that he even responded back to me when I reached out to him. So I'll leave that mystery hanging up in the air. But that is going to be coming your way probably in 2 weeks' time from now. Then I've got a fair few other folks in the pipeline as well. So lots of good stuff coming on. And we do continue to march forward to episode 100, which I think is due around about the end of the year. So, one, thank you very much for your support, and thank you for, making it worth my while to do nearly 100 episodes now. But, secondly, I'm going to definitely try and come up with someone very special for that. I have a few names in the offing. I have a few people that I've already reached out to and kind of tentatively confirmed, but I will let you know nearer the time who that is going to be. For now, I'm going to cut the chit-chat and throw you straight into my conversation with Jesse Matthewson of Ken Mode. So I have to tell you, first and foremost, part of the reason why you're on the show is because I've recently, due to various external work circumstances, found myself looking at the cover of Success and thinking to myself, I am the dude on the bed of that cover. And you listen to Blessed in particular, and you're like, why do I wake up every morning feeling like this song? But how have you been doing, man? How's everything going? How is life during these unprecedented times treating you?
I mean, all things considered, I don't have too much to complain about, or at least I shouldn't, because I know a lot of people are a lot worse off, and Canada specifically, like a lot of our programs, as long as you're doing business by the book, you're generally taken care of not too badly. I mean, Shane and I both work in the music industry, so obviously, like, it took a hit, but we're not terrified that we're not eating or anything like that. So, all things considered, shy of the mental torture of what this entire last year has been, we've survived it. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah. Can you believe that it's been over a year? I mean, I think for us, it's like day 375 or day 380 at the moment. And I paused to consider that the other day, and I was like, I cannot fucking believe that it's been over a year of invariably not being able to leave the house, no shops open, everything just outside of your kind of, wherever you live, it's just basically a ghost town.
Yeah. I mean, when it hit, like, we kind of all thought we'd be back to normal by the fall.
Yeah.
At least remembering that. It's funny thinking about that now, because, like, that's a sick joke. Like, of course we weren't back to normal by the fall. If anything, things got so much worse in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
And even now, like, I mean, Canada's kind of on the pathetic side for the vaccination end of things. I know, watching, even for me, like, friends of mine in the UK and the US that are in their 30s getting vaccinated now. And for us, like, my parents are only just getting their vaccination appointments for April. I did a little government exercise where you can sign up to get notified when you're eligible to get vaccinated. And it kind of tells you a rough cut estimate of when to expect it and where you are in, like, your place in line. And my city has roughly 700 or more thousand people who live in it. And it said that there have already been 180 something thousand people vaccinated, and there are another 387,000 people ahead of you. Like, oh, well, fuck me.
I thought the Commodore 64 that they used to run the government computers just spat out a syntax error.
Yeah. Oh boy. So I'm not really holding my breath right now. The fact that my parents are able to get it is kind of enough for me. At least maybe I don't have to be worried about being around people. Like, we haven't been really having proper band rehearsals because of all this. Specifically, the one guy that we've been working with locally, his partner is a childcare worker. So we're like, yeah, I don't really want to spend prolonged periods in a room like that with him, just in case, because I'm around my folks all the time. And I don't want to risk with them getting at least the first round of the vaccine. Like, at least then we can practice properly. And, like, we kind of need to. We have a record, like, studio time booked for 3 months from now, which is kind of terrifying.
So everything is written and, in place for the next for the next album?
Ish.
Kind of.
I mean, I've got more than a record's worth of material that's, like, ready. We just have to rehearse it in kind of a crazed way. But we're still working on a few songs. We've kind of rough got nearing 70 minutes of material that I think we might be able to do something with, but Shane and I are still working out the kinks in maybe 20 minutes worth of it. But we've got at least 60 that's, like, kind of ready to go, I think. Yeah.
And this is the record where Ken Mode goes prog, or is it what's kind of the vibe of the new music like?
I kind of, it's going into two different camps. There's one that's, like, more miserable than ever, heavier than ever, with almost, like, slight bizarre industrial vibes being mixed in. And then another side that's kind of just melancholy mixed with almost like a prog feel, like, legitimately.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I've been experimenting. I bought a couple Moog synthesizers last year. I've just been listening to way too much Nine Inch Nails, and I think that's coming through in some of it, but probably not to a lot of people terribly obviously. But we've definitely, with mixing in that classic Moog sound, it kind of is inescapable, especially, like, we've always delved into mildly melodic, semi melancholy feeling tracks here and there. I know it's part of what makes people either love or hate us, because we constantly deviate from what maybe they were expecting. But I think we've been leaning a little bit further into that, because it just seems as though the music that Scott and I were writing is either really, really furious and dark or kind of sad.
Yeah. I was just about to tell you, though, I mean, you guys do melancholy extraordinarily well. I've always been surprised that you don't do more of it. Like, Romeo Must Never Know, as an example. Such a fucking phenomenal tune. Dead Actors is the same. I mean, Dead Actors kind of has like it's got a melancholy vibe, and it has a Fugazi vibe as well, which, that both of those are winners in my opinion. I mean, I listen to a lot of black metal and death metal, but when it, you can't say anything bad about Fugazi in front of me. And it was interesting on Success. I don't know whether this was intentional, whether I'm off base, but I did hear quite a significant Fugazi influence in some of that music.
I mean, it's undeniable that that's in there with some of the DNA of the band. Like, we've been listening to bands like Fugazi since we were teenagers. So on the nose or not, I don't know. Because they kind of, for me, meld into a lot of the bands that influenced that record a little bit more directly. Stuff like Slint and a lot of the Touch and Go and Discord bands that have always influenced us. We kind of wore that on our sleeves for that record. So yeah, totally fair ball to call out Fugazi on that one. With Dead Actors specifically, I always end up leaning back on a lot of the whether it's known or not, the Dazzling Killmen, the material that they did back in the early 90s. People kind of know them more for their more furious side, but when they got melodic, you can hear that in us a lot of the time. But yeah, it's kind of a blend of all that stuff that from that specific time period that we definitely made a point of dragging to the forefront.
Yeah, you mentioned Nine Inch Nails, and again, this is another thing I was watching the other day, and I think Trent was up for another award, and I kind of sat back thinking, if you got into Nine Inch Nails around Pretty Hate Machine and Downward Spiral, when the band was kind of still rough and not really made for mass consumption, I think it's mind blowing to think that now he's up there in a tuxedo and he's collecting these awards for these, frankly, amazing scores that he's writing. Yeah. But he's such a darling of the music industry and of the film industry now, and I find it so. I'm pleased for his success, but it's just so surreal to me to see that.
Yeah, and for a guy that's kind of largely done it on his own terms too, like you never get the sense that he's doing things that he doesn't want to do, especially now. Like, even with the scores that he does, it very much sounds like him. Oh
yeah, without a doubt. I was going to say, I remember when I saw them play in I can't remember when this was, like 2015. They did, as it was in between one of the tracks, they actually had Hand Covers Bruise, the first track off the Social Network score. They had that playing as like an intro to the track, and it really gave like a really cool build up. But I mean, it fit in perfectly into the Nine Inch Nails milieu as well. I mean, he has a very specific way of structuring melody, writing melody, and he also does a lot with very little. He's like one of those people that can wring an extraordinary amount of emotion out of two notes, where other people would have 5-6 different things going on. But sorry, I just wanted to comment that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, but and I mean, on that kind of note, you'll hear the two notes when he does something like that, but he will end up having like 5 or 6 different things going on that are all subtly happening around it that only enhances those two notes or that melody, which we definitely have played with on this new material. And I've had a lot of fun with that. I kind of, the big takeaway from the COVID-19 pandemic hitting was that it forced me to start doing pre-production on my computer. I'd flirted with it like 15 years ago when things were considerably harder to get into, and you needed to have a specific computer dedicated to audio production if you're going to do that back then. And nowadays, like, I was able to set up Reaper on my regular work computer. Like, it's just a Dell XPS. It's nothing special, but all this stuff now runs on these regular computers, which, I mean, go figure. All these companies determined that if we actually cater to like a really novice and not expert, we can make way, way more money. So, and everything is so much more user-friendly. So it took me only a couple months to really dive into this kind of head first. And that's when we started like really rolling forward on writing a new record. And it's been a lot of fun getting to do pre-production in this way. And that I've actually been able to approach songwriting in a similar fashion to the way someone like Trent Reznor does, where you'll come up with like maybe a single idea and then you build an entire song around just building off of that. There's a couple of tracks where you can hear that that's what's happening with what we've done. But then, like when you throw in Shane playing and Scott playing and my stupid, horrible voice, like it's very much still a Ken Mode track. But just the songwriting approaches, we've been able to kind of expand our horizons, which has been a lot of fun. And we obviously like have tracks that like here and there sound like classic, what you'd expect from us. But I think the stories we're going to be able to tell with this record, as opposed to the way we've historically done it, will be an interesting one. I hope people are on board for it, and I have a feeling they will, because this stuff heavy as all hell.
Yeah. It's again, it's interesting you describe the stories, because I love the way that you write lyrics. I mean, again, if I think about Dead Actors, you just that line, a nice day for a walk to the end. It's such a loaded line that you can interpret in so many different ways, but at the same time, there's something so vivid about it as well, and it's so eloquently put. But everything from kind of the album art, through to the lyrics, through to the song titles, through to even kind of the, I remember with Success, you guys were putting out those singles, and each single had like a different piece of art, and they obviously all kind of links together. But there does seem to always be, in a quite abstract way, something that's very thematic about every record that you guys release. How do you how does that develop? Is that something that you guys kind of work together as a band organically? Is there something that evolves, through the recording process, or do you go into a record kind of knowing beforehand, okay, this is the atmosphere I want to capture, or this is the story I want to tell, to borrow a phrase from you?
I know this is a problem that Scott historically has had with the albums he's made with us, in that it's inconsistent at best. When we made Loved, we very much had a theme. It kind of starts with an aesthetic feel that I have in mind, and then it's trying to express that and get everyone on board and have them understand. And he felt as though when we did Loved, he understood it earlier on. Meanwhile, with Success, and especially this new batch of songs, he was struggling to see the end result that was brewing within my brain that constantly shifts depending on my mood. So with Success, I feel like we had kind of a general vibe going into it, but the musicality and where we wanted to go with the actual sound of it wasn't 100% clear, at least to everyone else. I had a bit of an idea, but even in the end, I don't know if it necessarily played out the way it was meant to when we first started. But with both of those records, working with Randy Ortiz directly with the artwork, we definitely had an aesthetic vibe that was playing out throughout the entire process of making these works as a whole, where we involved him very early on with knowing the source material, knowing the lyrics. So he was generating images that very much fit the overall vibe of everything. Although with Loved, the cover art he actually had finished before we even wrote the album. So it kind of influenced the overall sonic vibe too. And we actually referenced it. I had a sticker of that picture that he made. It would have been like late 2016 that I just had sitting on my mantle, and every day I'd look into its eyes. And that definitely influenced the feel that we were going for with that record.
And I was about to say, one of the fucking creepiest things I've ever seen on an album cover, bar none. And again, you can have all of the black metal or death metal covers on the face of the earth put together. That's the one that'll stand out and people go, that is fucked up.
Yeah. And a lot of people can relate too. Like it's one of those images. I actually have the record LP sitting on top of a filing cabinet in my office here. So that's when I look up, I'm looking at him staring down at me.
Well, I mean, again, you mentioned kind of a vibe and an atmosphere, but if ever the music of a record captured the vibe of the album cover or the aesthetic of the album cover, I mean, the music on Loved, not an entire kind of 180 from Success, but I mean, there's some serious snarl on that record.
Yeah, it's not a happy record necessarily. although we've been cutting sort of jokes about our process, because a lot of the lyrics on Loved, they come across as harsh, but a lot of them reference inside jokes that we as a band have. And we were talking about from album to album that Scott's been a part of the band, that the previous records sound harsh, but like they're jokes that we're laughing at. And with this latest batch that we're now approaching, they're still jokes, but now even we're not laughing at them.
It's like one of those. It's like the tragic comedy concept. It's like,
yeah.
What's the line that comes to mind? It's an album title. It's like, how can I? Oh, it's Suicidal Tendencies. How can I laugh today when the world is going to end tomorrow, or some shit like that.
Yeah, and there's the comedians have that the equation that tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yeah,
and that's just like thing that they all say all the time.
Oh, although comedy is no longer allowed, so
yeah.
I thought if ever there was a blight on Western culture, it was the outrage when Bill Burr got pseudo cancelled for daring to make a joke about the fact that he's not going to be able to pronounce somebody's surname because he doesn't speak Spanish. And then I remember, I mean, he's married to Naya, who's African American herself. This one guy pipes up on Twitter saying that, actually being married to an African American could also be a sign of racism because you're having a minority sex slave. And her response to him was to tweet at him directly, "Fuck you, bitch."
I haven't honestly really been paying attention much. Bill Burr's not actually canceled. No one's.
No. But I mean, there was it was the Twitter mob were screaming and saying, "A racist! How could they have had him on the Grammys?" It's like, have you never watched his comedy? He's. I know he's acerbic, but I mean, Jesus Christ! If ever there's a guy that pokes fun at himself for who he is, it's Bill Burr.
Yeah. I think he gets in trouble anytime he's on a mainstream stage to a degree, but I don't think any of that's going to affect him. It's funny the way people always both sides complaining all the time, because like ultimately there's not a lot of people who really get outright canceled.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
That a lot of comedians, like, they all take issue with the concept, but the number of people who like don't actually have a career anymore are like next to none, which is kind of funny. And I mean, it's all noise, right? That's the thing that frustrates me the most, is from both sides. It's just constant noise. And I can't deal with it. This year has been bad enough as is, and paying attention to people just having legitimate psychological breakdowns in real time online. I don't need to watch.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've said this on a couple of conversations that I've had recently, including one with Mike of Tombs, who I think you know as well. Yeah. I said, in my opinion, the worst thing that ever happened to the human race, and it's never been more evident than it's been this year, was the advent of social media. It's the fucking worst thing that's ever happened. I mean, I use Twitter, I use Facebook. Obviously, I use Facebook to reach out to you. It has its uses, but if it were up to me, it would be removed. It would be removed from society. It would never have been invented. It has turned people into it's put a magnifying glass on everybody's worst traits and their most self-indulgent characteristics, and everything that makes me has always made me detest human beings and find comfort in music like Ken Mode.
Yeah, it's funny because it's, as was mentioned, and I bring this up a lot, that granted it's all propaganda, but the documentary that was put out on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, like the phrase that the director made about that it's simultaneous utopia and dystopia. I reference that a lot because it's so painfully true and constantly abundant, that sentiment comes to the forefront. Like you mentioned, social media brings out the worst in people, but at the same time, like, you connected with me through it. And the only reason I keep a personal profile is to keep in touch with different people I've met on tour or through this band, and to be able to share our views and the way we have found and adopted different mediums of art. And that's ultimately like, as much as I hate seeing things I shouldn't know about people I don't really know, getting to talk about and learn about new art from them is also the meaning of life to me. Like, I'm painfully addicted to discovering and absorbing new music since I was a teenager. And this indulges that obsession to a degree that I never would have seen possible when I was a teenager. And I mean, that is one of the wonderful things about it, but you kind of can't get one without the other, right?
No. For every cool person you meet, and obviously it only took 5 or 6 dick pics from me to get you to respond. Yeah. But for every cool person that you meet, there's 900 guys, commenting on a porn star's, by a picture on Instagram where she comes up saying, "I feeling ugly today," and she's all made up. And then, some fucking moron is like, "Are you okay, hon? I'm there for you if you need me." It's like, do you think out of the 5,000 fat slobs messaging her that she's suddenly going to stop and go, "Oh my God, this guy is different"? That's the one for me.
Yeah.
But you do have to, it's like, George Carlin said at one, I remember seeing an interview with him and he said that, he has gotten to a point in his life where he's just sitting back and he's just a spectator watching it all unfold. I kind of feel like that a lot as well. I think that's the only way you can, if you don't learn how to laugh at all the crazy bullshit going on around us, you will go out of your fucking mind.
Yeah. What was that, an interview with Jon Stewart? I think I remember that one like quite vividly. It was a really good interview. I think he referenced that in his very last special too, where he was talking about how he took his pony out of the race a long time ago. He's just watching as the world falls apart and laughing.
Yeah.
Which is very joke-esque, but
very, very much so. But you mentioned the kind of discovery or the journey you started when you were a teenager. How did that start for you? What kind of sparked that? Did you get it from your parents? What and how did it begin?
Yeah, it's my dad's fault. He bought me a Nirvana tape when I was 12 because he wanted to hear it because he thought he was too old to be buying things like that. Curious.
So he wanted to hear it. What was the album?
Yeah, it was In Utero, which if there was an album that's going to fuck a teenager up, if it's actually going to like resonate with them, that's the one. Because I know like they were clearly accepted by the mainstream, whether or not the band themselves wanted to be, but like that was their antisocial record. And that just opened the world of noise rock, punk, hardcore, metal, all of it for me. Yeah, it was really, Nirvana was the gateway drug. That fucked me up really thoroughly.
I love In Utero as well. And I mean, I kind of went this weird route because for me, I grew up in South Africa. So I've told these stories so many times on the podcast, but I was generally, a lot of my initial discoveries were all done, was all kind of by me. So, I was already into Metallica and Slayer and Pantera and stuff like that. And then I got hold of Bleach and I really liked that. And then Nevermind came out like that. In Utero, I loved when it came out and I still do. It's probably the record that I go back to of Nirvana's most frequently. My favorite song on there being Dumb, which I think it's such a brilliant kind of tongue-in-cheek song, but kind of some more roast at the same time as well. And just so beautifully written. I mean, the strings that they have in there, everything is it's just awesome. Very, very catchy tune as well, but a great, great record. I totally agree with what you're saying though. If ever an album was going, if that was your gateway and that was going to lead you down a path, it explains an awful lot about how Ken Mode ended up sounding.
Yeah, and specifically, like the song that did it for me too was hearing "Scentless Apprentice" for the first time. Is the kick drum and snare intro and the screaming, just the wailing in the chorus, like the hair on my arm stood up. And like if that's ever telling what path you're going to go down in life, if that's the song that spoke to you, okay, whatever.
Were you into any other music prior to that?
Not particularly. Music wasn't a thing I was like. I mean, I played piano. I'd been playing piano, going through the Royal Conservatory of Music from the age of like 5 on, but I never really cared about music. It was more so, I think my parents forced me to take that because they took it as like a practice in hand-eye coordination and just exercising a different part of your brain. But I never really cared about music until that moment. And it just getting into Nirvana. And I actually read the book Come As You Are, that authorized biography that Michael Azerrad did. And I like followed up every band that Kurt Cobain talked about. I dug into the Melvins, Black Mudhoney, Scratch Acid, the Jesus Lizard, Big Black, like all of that world. I'd go buy the records, and like it just kept getting worse for me.
Yeah. No, I know that, and that again, that was part of the magic of those days. You know, you like, I agree with you. It's awesome to be able to discover new stuff on the internet. But what I miss, and I'm sorry that my daughter is never going to be able to experience the thrill of having spotted somebody wearing a T-shirt by a certain band, going out buying the CD, not knowing what it sounds like, and you put it on, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is fucking brilliant!" It's like you discovered, plutonium. It's just absolutely incredible. It's an amazing feeling, and it's gone, unfortunately, for this generation.
Also, the flip side of that though was going out buying the thing on a whim because of the reference points and having it just not click at all.
No.
And being completely fucking devastated because you didn't have much money. Like for me, I remember, I'll never forget that with a band like the Digits, because I remember it was referenced, if you're a fan of Tad or all these other bands, you like the Digits. So it's like, I'll get the Digits. And it's like, that's like months worth of allowance that I'm spending on that one CD, and I fucking hate it.
Yeah. But so you mentioned the Digits. Were there any, can you think of any other kind of major, you put it on, you're like, this is the biggest load of shit that I've ever heard of in my entire life?
For an actual record. Oh, one that I remember, the band, I think they were called Swallow. They were on a Sub Pop comp. I think the Sub Pop 100 or 200. And they had this one killer song on it. And it took me years to be able to import their full length. And that was the only good song on it.
Yeah.
The rest was just, ugh. I was so incredibly disappointed because it took me years to get it. It was expensive because I think it was, what was it? It was off of Tupelo, which was a European import. Because I remember the label Tupelo, because Boner Records always worked with Tupelo to do their European side. And like Boner put out all the early Melvins records. So I thought like, well, it must be onto something. If this band's also on Tupelo, this has got to be cool. And this song was so good. And then the whole record just sucked.
Speaking of your piano playing, so you mentioned Royal Conservatory. Is that as big time as it sounds like, or is it just piano teacher down the road?
I mean, Royal Conservatory is just the school that you take. You can be in the Royal Conservatory and have any old piano teacher, but it's a process of taking exams every year. It's like cool. I actually got up to grade 8 in piano. And if you pass grade 8, that's the level that you require to go into the School of Music in the university level. So I was close, but no cigar. Not that I wanted to go to school for music, because obviously I quit playing piano for a reason. And it was because rock and roll ruined my life.
But so my mom was a music teacher, which is partly why I asked. But I mean, grade 8 is a fucking, I mean, that's, you need to know your shit to be able to come anywhere close to achieving grade.
Yeah. The funny thing about all that is I kind of had to go through a process. I think we're getting some weird timing on the stream here. Back?
As soon as we mentioned Bill Burr and cancel culture, the left struck and trying to. No, I think we should hopefully be okay now. But yeah, sorry, I was just praising you for coming anywhere close to reaching grade 8. My piano playing started and stopped with my mom telling me, sit down and I'm going to teach you how to play Amazing Grace. And I said, Amazing Grace isn't AC/DC, so no thanks.
Yeah, with the Royal Conservatory, it's funny because I, up until a few years ago, was incapable of actually improvising on a piano. And that's part of why I always, when people like parents or whatever ask me about starting the guitar, like, would you recommend taking lessons? And I always tell people with the caveat, like, what are you doing this for? Like, if you're doing it for the sake of just learning some stuff to play at parties or whatever, or for the novelty of playing someone else's songs, then sure, take lessons. But if you're approaching this because you want to be able to write your own stuff, I'd say don't do it, because it puts too many things in a box. I mean, there are plenty of players that are able to separate those two paths. But for me, I was just incapable of it. And it's been nice the last few years actually playing piano and not feeling confined and being able to actually improvise and write on it. And I've been utilizing it a little bit more on the new material that we've been working on. There's a couple songs with piano on it. So it's and it's one of those instruments that you really need to spend time writing with too, if you're going to try and incorporate it into a heavy band. Like the ways we've used it in the past, I don't necessarily feel was super organic. It felt kind of forced on my part. And I mean, the parts still turned out well. It sounds cool, but I think the way we're utilizing it now is way, way more appropriate.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on there, by the way. I think for me, piano has always been something that is really kind of, there's something softer and more emotive about it than necessarily something that's going to fit in perfectly into a heavy band without you sounding like Guns N' Roses, on User Illusion. So it's, sorry, just hold on for 1 second.
Oh, good.
When somebody calls through to my phone, it cuts into the feed. So sorry, I just need to switch the Bluetooth off my phone. But the point I was making was, it's always been something that's it's a softer instrument. It's more about kind of conveying emotion necessarily than in conveying impact, which is ultimately what you want in heavy music. So it's a very, very, I think you need to musically be very, very sharp and very knowledgeable to be able to do that properly.
Yeah. Although counterpoint on that, like piano, if you're using it from a melodic context, I think you need to very much be knowledgeable about where and how to use it. But, and this is something we're going to experiment more with on the new record, especially on one of the tracks that I've written. If you're using it from a strictly percussive standpoint, you can get a little more brazen with it, and you can fit it into things that are considerably more aggressive. But again, you need to carve out the sonic space for it, which in the past I don't think we necessarily did. And then that in itself can be very tricky, but when you nail it, it sounds really fucking heavy and cool.
Yeah.
And really just, treating it like a percussive instrument as opposed to something that's carrying the melody.
Yeah. Just based on that, based on your kind of background as a piano player, and you're clearly a bit of a multi-instrumentalist and love music, is film scoring or anything like that, has that ever come to mind as an option? Is it something that you would like to do down the track?
I never really took it seriously in the past, but now that I'm doing my own production at home, it's something that could be possible. Whether or not I ever actually end up doing it is another thing. But baby steps on all this. I'd like to. We did that split with Shell, North Dakota, and Kowloon Walled City that came out in January, and I engineered and mixed that, and we mastered it. So that was kind of the first thing I've ever actually recorded that we put out proper into the larger spectrum of music listening. And I'd like to be able to utilize these skills further in the future, where we've historically just really put out albums every few years. And if we can kind of stretch that out by me issuing singles every now and again, to especially with the way the prospect of live music looks right now, and that it's a big floating question mark that nobody knows what's really going to happen over the next few years. I think having access and the ability to do something like this will be valuable for a band like us, especially being in Canada. Like, I don't know when the hell we're going to be able to tour Europe or the United States again. So we might as well just keep spitting out this like poisonous hatred from Canada.
You should pitch that. Like, like Impaled Nazarene in the old days used to call themselves nuclear metal. You should just like have like a block on every CD cover, like poisonous hatred from Canada.
I've used the tag Northern Bellicosity done politely for a number of years, and I still believe in that tag.
Yeah. Are you going to do the recording and the engineering and mixing stuff yourself for the new record?
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
We're bringing in a pro for that. We're actually going to work with Andrew Schneider again, who did Loved with us, and he's done and Unsane Daughters, etc., etc., etc.
And I think actually gets you guys really well as far as making the sound really, really beefy and impactful. But while still giving everything on the mix room to breathe, and making every instrument stand out. But like I said, it still sounds it has that kind of wall of sound feel, at least to my ears. That I think with a band like yourselves, if you have somebody that maybe is a little drier in the way that they record, or tends to leave the mix a little thinner, I think it sometimes doesn't work.
Yeah, and I mean, that's we've been going down a bucket list of engineers and producers the last bunch of years, having some access to government funding to make records. We've been trying to make the most of it while we have the access to it by working with literally the best people in the world in our genre. So we'll ride it until the tap turns off, and then figure out how to make records a little cheaper again.
Well, I mean, so you are intimately, or you're deeply embedded in the music industry. You guys have got MKM management, so
yeah.
Kind of seeing the business from that side of the fence. How are things changing in your mind with COVID-19? Obviously, live music is a big deal. How do you think things are changing right now? And what do you see as the future for musicians in smaller, smaller bands, underground bands like Ken Mode?
I think more and more we will see bands with any kind of notoriety bringing things more in shop and having the people in the band trying to do all the various industry positions that historically they'd farm out simply because they can't afford to be paying someone else to be doing it. That the bands that we work directly, like we work from the business management side. So we do for Canadian bands, a lot of grant writing. We handle a lot of the accounting and tax and budgeting and things like that, which that side of things is still wiser to hire a professional. So I think that is one of the things that for us, we differentiate ourselves in what we do functionally in the industry, where not a lot of the business managers that you see have a background in actually being in a band, and specifically being in a band from the world that we're a part of. Like, we inherently get our band's trust by the fact that we've slept on floors. We've lived in vans. Like, we're not posing here. We've done the thing and are continuing to do the thing. So, but I'm kind of digressing from the actual subject matter here. In terms of where this industry will go, especially with the way streaming is, I think more and more it'll be advantageous to have things in-house, because if splitting up who's getting a cut of things with streaming, like the revenues aren't going that far. So you need every bit you can. It'll be very interesting to watch the power of places like Spotify grow over the next bunch of years, because already it's gigantic. The payouts suck, proportionally speaking. And something's got to shift there. And I feel like there's going to be potentially another change in the delivery mechanisms for bands. I know even through the pandemic, like, Bandcamp has had to have grown by a large amount, simply the way they treat bands with those revenue split and the foregoing their cut. And you're seeing more and more the smaller distros, I think, are increasing their reach and power within the industry too, when mail orders it's kind of moving back to that feeling of the 90s where mail order is kind of king in the underground again, like, because there really aren't record stores to go to, and even if there were, you can't go to them this year. So we're moving back to a degree of the DIY ethic, which I'm all for. I think I'm very pro small business. Obviously, that's what our band has always been about. And that's the way I like living my life, like be in control of your own destiny. So I'm hoping it goes more and more toward DIY, especially with like even the live music scene. With the way things have been going, like more and more venues were getting bought up by these massive promoters. And I think even through the pandemic, there's that huge shift where a lot of these places are going under and getting scooped up by places like Live Nation. And I think we're going to see a big movement back to community hall shows, a lot of the like really DIY promoters. And that's going to be the way this music survives. Yeah, and I think it is the way this music thrived in the past anyway. So I'm not sad about that shift.
Yeah. When you say, things are going to come in-house to bands that have a degree of notoriety and name recognition already, do you see a point where, record labels, as an example, become redundant? And because I know that's something it's been spoken of by a lot of people, for years and years. I mean, I remember Peter Dolving from The Haunted wrote several essays about how, labels shouldn't exist. Bands should be able to do everything themselves. I feel like with Bandcamp, there's more and more bands, and I know people personally who just choose to be independent. They're like, we can make more money, and we can get better reach and distro as an independent band than we would by being a small band on really any label, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, it all kind of depends on what you want to farm out, right? If you want to handle it yourself, or if you want someone else to do it, because there are obvious payoffs. Some of these labels, they're professionals at promoting, so. Chances are, if you want to go down that path, you will probably be better off. In theory, maybe not. I don't know. It all depends on what you're in it for. So, and I mean, more power to the bands that have gone down the larger indie or even trying to exploit the major label market. And then after kind of spending their time in that limelight, then moving back to being a DIY entity. Like you see bands like Neurosis, where they spent time building up their profile on Relapse and then scaling everything back in-house and handling it all themselves for the next 20 years, which seems to have worked for them. And you see it more and more with a lot of bands. They build themselves up, then work it all themselves. That's kind of, I think, the way to make the most bang for your buck here. But obviously, things have been changing over the last 10, 15 years anyway. And you see plenty of bands who can do the thing without the label help. And if that works for you, awesome. More power to you.
And are you guys still with Season of Mist?
Our contract is up, so we don't really know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
you might be scaling back yourself.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll probably work with a label just because I like farming out that side of it. I don't necessarily want to have to manage all the marketing, even though I historically, even when we were on Season of Mist, I kind of acted as the marketing manager, where I'd be the conduit to which all the different regions had to go through to figure out what the plan was. Plus, we were a small enough band that like the label didn't really care that much, so someone had to kind of man the ship, so to speak. And I like to continue doing that. So it just depends on who we're working with for that.
Yeah.
Either way, we're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing them. Just, it all depends on whose label's on the back of the thing.
Yeah. And I mean, without wanting to pry, because I generally am very, very open about it on the show. I, for the most part, don't like labels. I don't want to work with any labels when I'm doing the show, except for a very, very small number. And that's basically 3 I can count on one hand: Apocalyptic Witchcraft, Debu Memorti, and Season of Mist. And that's purely because of, 1, my interaction with them so far, and 2, the quality of the bands I think they have on their label. But was your experience with Season of Mist positive?
Yeah, positive enough. One of the we kind of had a weird one because we them being a European label, we had higher hopes for how we'd be received in Europe and how they could help us there. And it became very apparent in the onset that their in-house PR in Europe didn't get us, because we're not exactly a standard metal band anyway. And it just so happened that when we signed with Season and Mist, their U.S. operations got taken over by Gordon Conrad, who used to run Escape Artists Records, who did our first 2 records, and he also ran Relapse. So he knew what we were about. It's just the Euro metal side maybe didn't quite get us. And on the last 2 records, we'd hired our own outside PR in Lauren Barley from Rarely Unable, who she handles bands like Neurosis and the Melvins and stuff like that. So that was really my only disappointment with that side of things, in that you kind of hope you're going to get a better footing in a market that you're trying to develop. And it didn't really take off the way we wanted, which, I mean, it is what it is, right? I definitely want to try and focus a little bit more on getting a better European presence still. And we've been talking with our old friend Matthias from Throat Ruiner, who also runs Death Wish Europe, about like setting up a proper European store for us over there. Just because I know a lot of Europeans have complained, because our web store we run out of Canada, which shipping in Canada sucks. And getting anything over to Europe is really expensive. So we do need some kind of presence there where we can take advantage of the fact that shipping is going to be considerably cheaper. So we'll probably get something together with him over the next year, just to at least have a better presence so people can buy stuff if they want it. And kind of, I like that Matthias has always been very of the DIY hardcore scene over there in France too. We've been buds with him for a long time. And he did the reissue of Venerable like a year after it came out in Europe back in 2012. So we'll at least have some stuff going there. And yeah, we'll see where it goes in terms of who puts the next record out. We've had a couple conversations and have a couple leads, but I haven't felt like shopping anything this year, because I just feel like it's setting myself up for disappointment that I can't emotionally cope with.
Yeah. Well, so one piece of disappointment, or one thing I'm struggling to cope with emotionally, is not being able to go out and train. I've become a fucking fat slob sat behind a desk working, 12, 13 hours a day, not being able to go to the gym, not being able to do Thai boxing or do any of the training that I did. You do Muay Thai, right? Yeah.
I've been doing that for 14 years now. You do Thai boxing too?
Yeah. Well, not as actively as I used to, but no. And I finally, the other day, I decided, fuck it, lockdowns or no lockdowns. I live on like a horse ranch with my girlfriend, and we cleared out one of the stables, and I hung up a big banana bag there. So I've been training on that.
Nice.
It feels so fucking good to finally start kicking and punching and elbowing again. But did you ever compete?
No, I did not. And that's actually the funny thing. I really, I've been doing it for a long time, but I feel like I started getting good since we stopped touring full time. But we don't have amateur kickboxing legalized in our province.
Oh, really?
So I humored doing some fights in 2016, and I couldn't get opponents. And after that, Ken Mode started getting active again. And at this point, if I wanted to fight, I'd have to travel to do it. And frankly, if I'm traveling, I want it to either be vacation or someone paying me to do music. So,
yeah.
And now I'm turning 40 this year. I don't really need to worry about fighting. I'm honestly in it for the love of the martial art. It keeps me in shape. It keeps my brain from falling apart. And I love having something that the journey of learning never stops.
Yeah.
Prior to COVID hitting, my plan was I wanted to be in Thailand this fall to celebrate my 40th in some way. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'll hopefully make it happen at some point in that 40th year. Because my grand scheme is I went to Thailand in 2018 and trained at Sitman Chai Gym for a bunch of weeks, and I'd like to go back, spend a week there, and then also try doing like a week's worth of private lessons in Bangkok with a bunch of Thai legends, just for the novelty of it. Like to say I got to do a private with Sagat, or go train with Namsak Noy at Adachai's gym or something like that. Like that'd be just so cool. And that's my plan with that.
I was just about to say, you didn't, when you were in when you were in Thailand, you didn't get, because my ex had 2 fights when she was there, and she was literally just on holiday, went to a Thai boxing school, and they were like, hey, by the way, do you feel like fighting? And next thing she knew, she was at the stadium. So you couldn't get one of those back, I wouldn't even call them backyard fights, back alley fights set up like they do over there.
I probably could have, but I really wasn't pushing for it. I didn't care. At the time, I just started getting some orthodontic treatment. So I had fucking like metal braces on. We had just recorded Loved, and then I jumped on a plane to Thailand. So we were actually mastering the record while I was out there. So my focus was kind of totally divided. Maybe when I'm a 40-year-old man, I'll be out there and I'll figure why not give it a shot. But even then, like all the people doing that shit, like unless I'm going up against someone else who's old like me,
that's the thing, man. I always say to people, I did 5 amateur fights, and on the 5th, I fought a guy that went pro 3 months later, and there is a fucking level change when you engage with somebody of that skill level. I mean, I got fucking whipped. He landed. So the story I'll tell you very quickly, because again, it is something I've said before, but it's hysterical, and you'll find this amusing. I won my first 4 fights very, very easily, and I very cockily took a fight on late notice. I think I had like 2 weeks to train for it, thinking I'll breeze through this, it'll be nothing. Sparring at the gym is going great, I'm et cetera, et cetera. So I walk into the prep area. I don't even know who I'm fighting. I start wrapping up, and I see this behemoth standing in the corner of the room, and I say to the person with me, like, I wonder who the poor loser is fighting that monster. And I keep on wrapping my hands. And Phil, the promoter, and the trainer comes in. I say to him, Phil, who am I fighting? And he's like, takes the paper. He goes, oh, you fighting Sammy? Points to that dude. I'm like, oh my God. So then the day just continues to get worse, because I start sizing him up, and I see, okay, he's got thick legs, same as me, probably won't be all that flexible. Next thing I know, he's doing the splits. And so the fight starts, and I have it on video. I touch gloves, and I swear to Christ, I've pulled my glove back for when the first leg kick already hits me on the head, and I'm like, you can see it takes me like a few seconds to get my bearings. I outboxed him for about 3 rounds, and at one point I was trying to do fucking like MMA takedowns. just to make sure, okay, just run down the clock, throw 2-3 punches, and then storm in, push him up against the corner, and try and take him down. It doesn't matter if they tell you off, and tell you this is not MMA, this is Thai boxing. Just run the clock down. Oh my fuck! In round 5, he lands a leg kick that was so hard that I just froze completely. And then landed about 5 or 6 more, and you hear my corner yelling, Jackie, get the fuck out of the corner, because he's like, bah, bah, bah. I was walking around like Gregory House for literally 2 weeks after that. But it was at that moment that any aspirations I had to move from novice class to A or B or whatever was done.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's I know it's funny with that too. When I was trying, the year that I was actively trying to get amateur fights, I had a few people drop off for that exact reason. Like, cause I'd been training at the time for 11 years maybe. And like the types of guys, at least from here, that usually are looking for fights that have 0-0 records or are very low ones, they haven't been training very long. So I'm the kind of nightmare that like is baiting people like that in. Oh yeah, he's like in his late 30s, no fights, easy. Slow down. He's been training with all the pros for years.
I was about to say, that's always the club thing. So, yeah, he's easy. Don't worry. I think he's had like 1 or 2 fights. What? The guy gets fucking murdered. Jesse, I'm so sorry, but I've got a hot stop. I have to fucking go back to get onto another work call. The thing this probably have carried on for another 2 hours, but thank you so much for your time. It was fucking awesome having you on the show. I'd love to have you on the show again at some point in the future.
Yeah, I'm doing actually delve into the fighting side more.
Fuck yes. Fighting and fighting, MMA, wrestling. So cool. All right, dude. Take care of yourself. Looking forward to hearing the new album, but hopefully we'll end up talking before then anyway.
Yeah, I think we should to help promote the thing. We'll do the thing.
Hell yeah. Cool. All right. Take care of yourself, buddy.
You
Bye-bye.
too, man. Later.
Bye. friend of mine once asked me how I would describe Ken Mode's music, and I said to him, if you take the emotion of being pissed off and you turn it into a song, that is literally 99% of what Ken Mode do. And there are a few better examples than the one you just heard. That was a song called Blessed off a record called Success that came out on Season of Mist. Make sure that you check that out if you haven't done already. Also check out their most recent record, which I believe dropped it back in 2018. It's called Loved, also out on Season of Mist. And as you would have seen if you stuck around all the way to the end, unfortunately that conversation was cut short by my mounting work obligations. So sadly, because this podcast doesn't pay me the big bucks, I did need to go sooner than I had hoped. I frankly think that Jesse and I could probably have squeezed out another 2 to 3 hours of that conversation pretty easily. So he'll be on for a sequel without a doubt, probably nearer the time that Ken Mode's new record gets released. But in the meantime, I really hope that you enjoyed that. And Jesse, if you are listening to or watching this, thank you very much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to number 2. Now, let's talk about some new music. And the first one to discuss is the upcoming record by Cannibal Corpse, Violence Unimagined. It's going to be released by Metal Blade Records. It is due out, I think, in about 3 days from the time that you are likely to be watching this. It's the follow-up to 2017's Red Before Black. And incredibly, this record boasts the band's first use of keyboards. There's loads of clean singing, tons of progressive elements. I am, of course, talking absolute shit because really this is Cannibal Corpse doing what Cannibal Corpse have always done. Now, what I would say, in the interest of full disclosure, this is probably the first Cannibal Corpse album that I have really looked forward to since Evisceration Plague, which I think came out back in 2009. I not for any other reason than for the fact that, since Evisceration Plague, I feel like there's just been such an influx of great new music that whenever a Cannibal Corpse record has come out, maybe I've taken them a little for granted, but I've also not necessarily found records like Torture, or even Red Before Black as interesting as maybe some of that stuff that came out in the 2000s. That being said, this one excited me most because of the fact that the first single, Inhumane Harvest, I thought was really, really good. I thought showed off Cannibal Corpse at their absolute best. And then I was also very excited to hear what Eric Rutan of Ripping Corpse, Morbid Angel, and Hate Eternal fame would bring to the game. Obviously, he's had an involvement with the band for a lengthy period of time, producing, I think, most of the last probably 5-6 albums. So he knows the band really, really well. I think him coming into the band was probably a fairly seamless switch. He replaces Pat O'Brien, and I think instantly what he brings to the table is a significant tunefulness to his guitar solos, which, his guitar, the way that he plays solos, he does have a pretty distinct style, and you hear that come out straight away, and I think that it contrasts really, really well to the chaos that Rob Barrett unleashes when they let him loose on the fretboard. But either way, this is a Cannibal Corpse record, and it's Cannibal Corpse doing what they've always done, right down to the Vincent Locke artwork. If Cannibal Corpse's consistency is all that makes sense to you in a crazy world, then you are going to be very, very happy indeed, because as far as I'm concerned, not only is this the record that I looked forward to most since Evisceration Plague, I think it's also probably their best. Part of the reason for that, I think, is that Cannibal Corpse have played to their strengths more so than they've done before. In my opinion, one of their biggest strengths is when they slow down their material, when they stick to a groove rather than trying to be fast, because as an example, and I've said this on other episodes before, and I've spoken about Cannibal Corpse, Paul Mazurkowitz, for all of his great many talents as a drummer, and the fact that he's a super nice guy, I don't think that he does speed as well as many others in the industry, but he does pull out a mean groove. So too George Corpse Grinder Fisher. I think that when the music speeds up, it sometimes feels to me like he tries to squeeze in too many words into a single line of lyrics. Whereas when a track is kind of slowed down, really nasty, like Death Walking Terror, which I think fans around the world would agree on as being one of the best Corpse Grinder era tracks the band has ever done. That's when he really, really sounds at his best. And there are a ton of standouts on this album. Necrogenic Resurrection, the first album single that I mentioned, Inhumane Harvests, are great examples of, traditionally speedy Cannibal Corpse anchored by a groove that is just absolutely pummeling in its heaviness. Like I said, I think it helps George's vocals sound great. I think it helps everybody's instrumental performances, which again is technical as all get out, but it helps it really stand out. And from my perspective, I think this is an album that even if you have been a Cannibal Corpse cynic for the last decade or so, and I do know a couple of people that are like that, then maybe this is the one that gets you fired up about the band again. And 15 albums into a career as stellar as these guys have had, that really is saying something. So I would definitely recommend that you check this out, regardless of whether you consider yourself a Corpse fan or not. And I am right now going to play one of my absolute favorite tracks off the album.
Criminal on the ground, stuck against another victim for complete control. Reaping final body parts, surgical precision taken on the moving soul. Slow line of a blood down the chest, removal of the organs, cut the arteries and veins. Everything must go before the victim dies, bring the body to dispose. Callous and so nefarious, leaving no trace, no evidence. They vanish, never to be seen again. Vanish from existence. Removal of the organs, cut the arteries and veins. Everything must go before the victim dies, burn the body to dispose. Callous and so nefarious, leaving no trace, no evidence. They vanish, never to be seen again. Vanish from existence. Inhumane harvest, subjugation of the victim for complete control. Inhumane harvest, surgical precision taken on the woman's soul. Numbers of the missing rise, while the prophet multiplies. So many lives erased, covert genocide. Numbers of the missing rise, while the prophet multiplies. So many lives erased, covert genocide.
called Violence Unimagined. It is out on April the 16th on Metal Blade Records. I don't actually think they've ever put out anything that wasn't on Metal Blade Records, so they're kind of like the like Brian Slagle's ultimate mascot. But yeah, either way, like I said, definitely a record that you need to check out. And without a doubt, it will be one of the biggest releases, at least commercially, of the extreme music scene in 2021. Now, we move on from the biggest death metal release of 2021 to arguably, in my opinion, the best death metal debut that I have heard in the last decade. Moral Collapse put out their self-titled debut on April the 2nd via Subcontinental Records. The band's core membership hail from India, but they do benefit from the drumming of Hannes Grossman as well. I believe Hannes Grossman played with Necrophagist. I might be corrected on that one, but I think that's the case. Either way, it doesn't really matter, because what stands out about this record isn't really the flashy drumming or the technical guitaring, or the fact that the band knows their way around a great death metal riff, which, all of that is most certainly applicable. But it's the way in which they roll up so many different influences, from old school death metal that, hints at Cannibal Corpse, Death, Possessed, bands like that, all the way through to avant-garde jazz into a focused, singular sound that, to borrow a phrase from Kelly T, who is here next week, is deadly from start to finish. In fact, in my opinion, this band earned extra kudos by virtue of the fact that they are perhaps the only band in metal, death, black or otherwise, to actually use a saxophone effectively. So rather than sounding like a load of pretentious tacked-on crap that could be heard on recent Ishon, Satyricon, or Rivers of Nile records, the saxophone flourish that they use at the end of a track like Abandoned Rooms of Misspelled Agony has a seriously sinister Middle Eastern feel to it, and it really kind of helps lend to the overall atmosphere and the overall unique vibe of the record. Moral Collapse also have the uncanny ability to switch seamlessly from these really kind of progressive, avant-garde passages that wouldn't be out of place on a Cynic record to just absolute blasting mayhem and violence that remind me a lot of the glory days of Nile on the Catacombs of Nephron Ka. Records like that. The vocals, production, instrumentation, songwriting, everything on this album is absolutely spot on. I mean, it is astonishing to me, one, that, a country not known necessarily for extreme music has produced something like this. It's also astonishing that, this is the first record that these guys have produced, which just to me suggests that whatever they do next is going to be either a complete and utter failure or mind-boggling indeed. I lean towards the latter. I frankly think that even if you're not into death metal, then you need to do yourself a favor and listen to this, because it is absolutely fantastic. So this is Moral Collapse, and the track that I'm going to play for you right now is called To the Blind, All Things Sudden.
To
To the Blind, All Things Sudden by Moral Collapse off their self-titled record that came out on April the 2nd via Subcontinental Records. I'd heard a lot of chatter about this on Twitter, which is why I checked it out, and I was not disappointed. You will not be either. This is absolutely fantastic. And to the Moral Collapse boys, if you ever want to come onto Into the Necrosphere, you are more than welcome. It'd be awesome to chat to one or both of you. So you have an open invitation if you want to come on the show, and just from my perspective, absolutely phenomenal. Well done on an incredible debut. Right, time now for some news. And first on the list of things to talk about, Fear Factory reveal new album title, first single coming. Dino announced this on Facebook, I think about a day or two ago, and he reminded me an awful lot of Danny DeVito selling used cars on a movie called Matilda, which I have been forced to watch with my daughter a couple of times. But for those interested, the album is called Aggression Continuum. Aggression Continuum. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of aggression on it, though. Additional details and pre-orders will start on April the 16th via the band's official website. I believe this is going out via Nuclear Blast, who seem to be signing up every band past their prime. The first single is going to be called Disruptor, and it will be released on the 16th of April. I am pretty sure it will be just as dull as everything that this band has done for the last probably decade or so. Moving on, Lamb of God present Bad Brains live cover. What could that be? Eye Against Eye, which I don't really care for all that much. If they had done, what is the fucking track called? It's slipped my mind now because I'm old and overworked. But there's a track on the first Bad Brains record that Prong covered as well, and it was absolutely fucking brilliant. It's a song that, even though it's not the most brutal thing you've ever heard in your life, you literally just want to fuck shit up whenever you hear it. It'll come to me in a second. But anyway, let's move on. Hideous Divinity launch new single and visualizer. Hideous Divinity are a technical death metal band out of Italy. Very cool name. I like the name Hideous Divinity. I've not really listened to this track as much. It does seem, though, that death metal is on the ascent this year. That's for sure. Obviously, I've spoken about Cannibal Corpse and Moral Collapse. But death metal bands seem to be bringing out stuff thick and fast this year. I think it feels to me, at least, like in greater, at least more prolifically than a lot of black metal. I do know that there's a fair few black metal bands that have got stuff in the offing, though, and I am very excited about the third in the quadrilogy that Panzerfaust have been releasing. I will definitely try and get my friend on from Panzerfaust again once they release their new stuff. But anyway, that aside. Impaled Nazarene, new EP out today. Share upcoming album details. Today is the official release day of Impaled Nazarene's Goat of Mendes 2-track EP. Incidentally, Goat of Mendes, the Akrakoka version, I think is celebrating its 20th birthday this year. So I have spoken about that on a past episode of the show, but I think they're going to do that record in its entirety at the Leeds Damnation Festival. So if you're in the UK, you definitely want to get tickets for that because it's going to be fucking badass. Hopefully, and I know some of the Akrakoka folks listen to this, hopefully they will celebrate the occasion by bringing back the suits. I'm a very, very big fan of the suits, and I still don't understand why they don't wear it on stage anymore. I know it's hot as shit, but I just thought it always lent them such a fucking cool vibe. But anyways, back to Impaled Nazarene. The EP title track will also be part of the Finns' upcoming full-length installment, their first in 7 years, entitled 8-Headed Serpent. It'll land in stores on May 28th through Osmos Productions. I did listen to the track on there, and it wasn't bad at all. I think the last Impaled Nazarene record that I really, really loved was A Road to the Octagon. I think it's called Road to the Octagon. The first track on the record has one of the cheesiest but most brilliant lines that I've heard from a black metal band in a long time. And I think Mika goes, "Violence, but dark sacrifices must be made in order to create darkness." And then you've got like this echo, "Darkness." It's absolutely fucking brilliant. All right, let's move on. Why in God's name Lordi is on this list, I don't know. By the way, once again, if you want to piss somebody off badly, try and convince them that Lordi are Gwar. as I may or may not have done on a website that on a website, a Facebook page that I ran or that I commandeered for a while. Next week on Kelly T Black Metal Reviews, I talk quite a lot about that. So if you want to hear how I used to spend my time before doing this podcast, then you're in luck, because I talk about that quite a bit. What else is on here that is of interest? Godspeed You Black Emperor is, one, a fucking terrible name for a band, but two, a band I've never ever gotten the appeal of, and I know a lot of people love it, but I have always thought that they were poo. Norse unveiled title and cover art of the forthcoming album. Australian dissonant black metal unit Norse are all set to release their brand new full-length titled Ascetic. Below you can have a look at the album's cover art, as well as listen to one of the preview tracks, Accelerated Subversion. Additional details coming soon. I know that my friends from Gravier, whose long sleeve I am proudly sporting at the moment, posted about this on Instagram as well. By the way, if you like Gravier's music, I'm going to be having a bit of a giveaway, a first ever on an Into the Necrosphere history, very, very soon. So Nathan very kindly sent me a bunch of cool Gravier stuff, including some vinyls, cassettes, CDs. He sent me some T-shirts, which obviously I'll be keeping. But the vinyls and things like that, we'll do a really cool giveaway on. So I just need to figure out how best to do it. Maybe whoever tattoos the Into the Necrosphere logo on their back will get something free. But either way, I'm gonna come up with something cool. I might have like a couple of cult hampers that I can give away. So maybe get some Into the Necrosphere merchandise plus some Gravier shit and give it away across successive months. But I'll work it out. I'll let you guys know. I've not listened to Norse yet, but I will say this. If my brothers from Gravier say it's good, then it's probably good. And frankly, like I've said before, the Australian black metal scene right now is so fucking cool that as soon as I see the word Australia in the description of a band, I am immediately interested. So I will definitely check that out. Moving on, another utterly shit name for a band, Subway to Sally. I know they've been around for a while, but good God, I mean, why on earth would you call your band that? D. Snyder revealed title and release date of the upcoming record. I don't even want to talk about this poodle-haired loser. The album is called Leave a Scar. It's another one of Jamie Jaster's cash-ins. I know he was talking about doing something with Wasp. I don't know why he doesn't get that done. Maybe Blackie doesn't want to do something with him. I don't know. But either way, I mean, if you're going to talk about a band from the 80s that were kind of part of the hair metal scene, but that had, a real sinister edge to them, I always thought Wasp was just absolutely fucking awesome. I think that, to this day, tracks like Mantronic, Animal, Fuck Like a Beast, just a lot of those old classics that Wasp do, they may have kind of been classed as glam, but I think they were really, really badass and mean in their own right. And I think with the right direction, I suspect Blackie could still make a really, really cool record. Act of Denial, the newly formed band featuring current and former members of Death, Soilwork, and Septic Flesh, among others, have released the new single, Slave. It's their fourth one in less than a year. I've not heard Act of Denial yet, but I do think that the word slave is a word that we should no longer use on or in metal songs. It's the same as freedom or any of the other kind of staid and hackneyed phrases that permeate throughout metal music. I think the last Slave song that should have been released was the one that the Amenta put out on what was the record called? Non. Beyond that, nothing, no more. I'm sick of it. This I haven't heard. Death, I love. Septic Flesh, obviously, I love. Soilwork, not so much. Whenever I see Soilwork included in any project, instantly I fear the worst. Wormwood, details of the new record disclosed. Swedish melodic black metal representatives Wormwood are pleased to announce the release of their new record entitled Archivet, in English it means the archive. The name was subsequently changed from Vita Archivet, more in statement below. I don't know what Vita is short for, but it must be something evil if they needed to change it. Set for release on July 16th, 2021. The band's third long player, I used that phrase last week and I took the piss out of myself for it, features 7 new music pieces. Other details can be found down under. I've not really heard anything off this record, or actually this is the first time I hear that the record is about to be released, but after Swartzen, that came out last year, I feel like some of my hope in the Swedish black metal scene is being restored somewhat, so I will check this out too. So it says here, Wormwood explained regarding the change of the album title. A Swedish funeral home service called Fonus sent us a cease and desist letter saying that if we go forward with the name Vita Archivect, there will be ramifications of the economical matter because they have a patent on Vita Archivect as part of their funeral service. We did know they had a service with said name, but we would be able to use it as it was unknown to us. They claimed it would cause confusion and infringe upon their service. That sounds like a load of fucking bullshit to me. After the lawyers' correspondences from both parties, we decided to just skip the name altogether to avoid further problems down the road. We as a band, of course, think this is fucking stupid, but what can we do? We're an underground band that can't fight lawyers for a living. I hope that the guys from that Swedish funeral home service are punished with extreme diarrhea for at least the next 12 months. Yeah, I mean, that's just a absolutely moronic thing to do. It's like when, and this is non-metal related, but a couple of years ago, there was a place in a really cool ice cream place in Covent Garden in London called the Ice Creamist that used to do what they called, I think it was like artisan ice cream. So they used liquid nitrogen to freeze it and, had all sorts of interesting flavors. And it was fucking delicious. Anyway, they, as a joke, released this flavor that they claimed used women's breast milk, and they called it Baby Gaga. And so Lady Gaga said that it was copyright infringement, bombarded them with lawyers' letters, and basically resulted in the shutting down of the shop. But, I mean, this again comes back to the celebrity worship and, the fact that these fucking idiots think that they can dictate to us what we can and can't do. Since when is something like that, a play on a public name, since when is that copyright infringement? It's not like they're stealing her songs and then saying that they wrote it, or, using just calling it Lady Gaga. It's a play on words. If someone wants to make a joke about Into the Necrosphere, I'm not going to go fucking crying to them. And frankly, I wouldn't be able to because I think Jeremy would own the name anyway. But you know what I mean. I just think I think anybody, whether you're in a business or you're a celebrity who overuses the old copyright infringement malarkey, I just think is pathetic. Green Jelly announced first album in 12 years. Now, I know I've said before that I don't have any guilty pleasures, but if there's one guilty pleasure that I do have, there's a techno song on one of the first, I think it might even be the first ever Green Jelly album, called House Me Teenage Rave, which is so disgusting and stupid and terrible that I just cannot help but fucking love it. So I'm not even going to bother reading the rest of it because I don't give a shit about a Green Jelly album, but I would definitely say that song, as much as it is absolutely atrocious, is still fucking cool. Sadis, Call It Quits. I didn't even know that they were still going. Bay Area extreme metalers Sadis have announced that the release of their long-awaited 6th studio album has been cancelled, and added that the band is over after nearly 4 decades together. The new album, which Sadis has been working on since 2017, would have been their first full-length since 2006's Out for Blood. I fucking loved Out for Blood. I think I spoke to Marco from Stellar Master Elite about it. I just thought it was just absolutely top-notch album. And, generally speaking, I've always loved Sadis. It's a fair old time to be working on a new record for, so I would assume that these guys just stopped getting along in the studio and decided that, enough was enough. But, if you're a Sadis fan, as I am, then hopefully that music gets released at some point, whatever they did there. And let's also be honest, in the music scene, it is extremely likely that in 2022 we'll see a headline that read, "Sadis is back." Speaking of which, I don't know whether anybody still has money on whether Slayer are going to come back or not. I've got to say, I know stranger things have happened. Obviously, Guns N' Roses got back together again after everything that happened there. But I'm less and less I'm starting to see that happening. I feel like, because I follow Tom Araya and I follow his wife on Instagram. His wife is heavily conservative and she really pisses off a lot of people. But I get the impression that so is Tom. And I feel like he has just had his fill of the music industry and I think never wants to, go on tour or do anything ever again. So I don't think that I'm not holding my breath for a Slayer reunion. I just don't see that happening. Napalm Death extend record deal with Century Media. I spoke about that last week, so I'm not going to talk about that again. I am, however, going to move over to the Democrat wing of rock music journalism. And we see, first and foremost, watch pro-shot video of Guns N' Roses performing in Brasilia, Brazil. Back in 2016 on the Not In This Lifetime tour, I obviously spoke about them getting back together again as well. I didn't see them on that tour. But frankly, again, as much as this might disqualify some of my cult credentials, I don't give a fuck, because I would have loved to have seen them. I think just to see It's So Easy live is awesome. I did see them back in, I think, 2008, when Axl was touring, when it was Axl and Friends, as opposed to the real Guns N' Roses. And again, they may have started about 2 hours later than they should have, but it was still a fucking great show. Metallica's Kirk Hammett is working on new riffs, of which I imagine one will be allowed on the next Metallica album. Slipknot's Sean Clown Crayon, Why Unreleased, Look Outside Your Window 2008 album has yet to see the light of day. When the drug debts mount up, they'll release that one. Orgy, bleh, terrible fucking band. Not going to bother talking about that. I've spoken about Fear Factory. There doesn't really seem to be a whole lot worth either talking about or making fun of on Blabbermouth, which is a shame. Exodus, Steve Zetro Souza has lost 62 pounds in less than a year. Frankly, I need to fucking follow suit with him. Our gyms are reopening on this coming Monday, so I would ideally like to be going back to the gym as of Monday, but there is so much that I have to do at work at the moment. It is fucking ridiculous, and I kind of say that just to because I can talk about these things on the podcast, but the last couple of weeks have been fucking brutal. I woke up every single day in the last week at about 5 o'clock, logged on by 5:45. On Thursday, or this Thursday past, my last call ended at 5:45. So, I mean, to be able to kind of carry on with the podcast, and do all of the things that I do, my life has to be managed by such military precision right now. It is fucking ridiculous. But the lockdown has definitely not been kind to my once muscular physique. That is for goddamn sure. And at the age of 41, I do feel like I need to pull the brakes just somewhat, because otherwise I may end up like one of these fucking 40-year-old statistics that I keep reading about. But well done to Zetro. 62 pounds is probably about what I'd like to lose, and I do want to lose it before I go on holiday in December, because I'm not going to be strutting my pale meat on the beach, and it'd be flabby as well. Anyways, Alex Webster reflects on Cannibal Corpse's Vile album cracking the Billboard chart. It was a big deal for a death metal band. Totally agree. Even though nowadays, cracking a chart doesn't really mean jack shit, because no one buys music anymore. Testament's Alex Skolnick talks with guitar legend Peter Frampton on Moods and Modes podcast. I think that Alex is one of the best guitarists ever, even though I don't agree with him on the old political front. But as a player, there are few people that can match what that guy does, and I would put him up against anybody in thrash any day of the week, and I'm pretty sure he would run circles around them. Kelly Osbourne to launch the Kelly Osbourne and Jeff Beacher Show podcast. I thought the world had forgotten about her, but apparently not. Photo book covering Ronnie James Dio era of Black Sabbath coming soon. I don't really see the point of owning a photo book. I mean, how many times are you going to sit back and take the book and go, right, I've got a beer, I'm going to crack open this book for the 17th time and stare at the same photos. I mean, I'm sure it looks cool, and if you have it on your shelf, I don't know, it's braggadocious, but I've never seen the point to stuff like that because I just don't see how much utility you can actually get out of it. How many times are you going to leaf through the same book, looking at the same pictures? But that's me. I'm sure there are people that are collectors who are going to poo themselves over it. And as I've said before, I personally think that the Dio era of Black Sabbath for me is more interesting than Ozzy. There's cool stuff from the Ozzy era. The first album is incredible, but for what it's worth, it may be underrated and disliked by a fair few people. They can go fuck themselves because I think that Dehumanizer is incredible. Okay, let's see what else there is to talk about here. AC/DC picture disc to be released as part of Record Store Day drops. I love AC/DC, and Kelly T and I are going to be talking about AC/DC at length. So again, if you want to hear us crack wise about the life and times of Bon Scott in particular, then definitely do that. This is going to be probably the last one I'm going to talk about. Philip Anselmo on performing Pantera classics. It's all about celebrating the life of Dimebag and Vinnie Paul. Firstly, let me say, when I said that that I've got lined up one of the bigger the biggest guests as far as profile is concerned that the podcast has ever seen, I will tell you right now it's not Phil Anselmo, as much as he's absolutely on the wish list. But anyway, just talking about this, I've not seen the I didn't watch the performance. It actually happened a day ago, as of the time I'm recording this. But I think it's fucking cool that they did it. I completely agree with the spirit in which they've done it. I think there should be a celebration of the life of Dimebag and Vinnie Paul. I hope that it came out well too. I don't know what the set list was, but I mean he's got a monster fucking band to do it with him. And I think anybody that wants to criticize him for doing this, once again, can go fuck themselves, because let's also be honest, Vinny was an amazing drummer. Dimebag, in my opinion, one of the greatest guitarists ever. But there was a man that took that band to the next level, and if anybody wants to try and discount that, then they can fuck right off. Yes, he was also one of the principal players in the band, dissolving. But, he also went through tough times, and none of us were there to know exactly what was happening. So there's always four sides to every story. And, for what it's worth, I've said it before, I think that Phil Anselmo is a guy there's far more depth to him as a character, I think, than a lot of people give him credit for. And I love the fact that to this day he's putting out interesting music, different music. He's not trying to, as much as obviously playing Pantera songs is a throwback to his past, but he's certainly not trying to cash in on his past the way, let's be honest, a lot of people who are veterans in the scene try and do. Side note, if you guys see these or you're watching this on YouTube and you see these toys that are pictured in the side bucket, that is because it's my daughter's birthday very soon, and I bought her all of the new Diamond Select Lord of the Rings action figures that have come out. She's a fucking Lord of the Rings nut. So, I know she's going to love them. And these Diamond Select figures, I have to say, are absolutely incredible. So she better like it, or dear old dad's going to be taking it and playing with it himself. Right, that is the news over for this week. That means that it is time to say goodbye for this week. Thank you very, very much for checking out the podcast. I hope that you enjoyed what you heard. Make sure that you check out Ken Mode, Cannibal Corpse, Moral Collapse. If you buy anything from their band camps, let them know that it was old Jackson that sent you their way. And wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, I hope that you stay safe and healthy. Remember to tune in next week for Kelly T. And by next week, who knows, I might reveal who my big guest is. From the mean streets of Great Shefford, I'm wishing all of you bad motherfuckers a fond farewell.